I'll do it in Unicorn Grove in the Gumdrop Woods or something, and see what it comes up with.
I was thinking pocket dimensions.
Oh, perfect. It will be the lost relic of pocket dimensions. I can't wait.
The lost relic of Polly Pocket.
How do we use the mechanics to reinforce the world building and the story development in a similar vein to what they did here with certain mechanics for the journey, when the journey is everything about Lord of the Rings. But then again, so many dungeons don't anyway, if you look at the construction of them.
Yeah. The way people map out dungeons and build them does not, in a lot of cases, ever make sense.
Alex, are you having an error 404?
Error not found.
Error not found? That's probably a good thing, actually. Not having errors found. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
All the errors are found. Every error has been found.
Perfect. Perfect. So it does compute. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Total Pebble Knockdown. I am Nathan.
And I am Alex.
And we are error-free. But it just happened this episode. Don't go back expecting less errors.
Just wait. There'll be an error.
It's coming very quickly. So, Alex, I did something that I didn't ever plan on doing. And that's a long list, I know. But in this particular case, I interacted with a thing called the ChatGPT. You've probably heard of it.
Mm-hmm. Once or twice.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, ChatGPT is, well, it's called an AI. It's a large language learning tool, basically.
It's an algorithm. And
the idea is that you can chat with it. You can ask it for commands, and it will generate a large amount of text that's on par of what you're asking it. I really did it just because I wanted to ask it one question. We talk about adventure hooks on this show a lot. And
it's one couple things you come up with once in a while.
Yeah, and we're always looking for a good one. We're looking for a good one. And so
we're on our quest to find the best adventure hook possible.
Exactly. And that should be an adventure hook in itself. The adventure hook is the quest to find the best quest.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
The quest was the quest we made along the way.
The quest we found along the way. Perfect. But I thought, well, I've got the power of the AI.
And the internet.
And the internet. The ChatGPT. And so I asked ChatGPT, what is the best adventure hook for tabletop role-playing? That's how I phrased it.
A fairly generic, straightforward question, I'm sure.
Yes, which is why I was going to be interested to see what it generated. And so I thought what would be fun is that I'll tell you what it spit back out at me, and you can tell me if you like it or not.
So I want to preface this with, I'm assuming it's going to be very strange, because I don't know that ChatGPT has the context of what an adventure hook for a tabletop RPG is.
Okay.
Like, I don't know how it works when you do it, so I don't... I'm assuming there's going to be very, very strange for it, but we'll find out.
We'll find out.
I feel like if you do this again, you could be like a legendary quest for heroes to go on.
Oh yeah,
and see what it generates then.
Maybe that's a follow-up,
I guess.
Yeah, that's a follow-up.
We'll see how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I don't know if it's necessarily weird. Well, I'll let you decide. I'll tell you what it gave me back. And it kind of gave it to me in 3 parts. The first part that I'm going to give you is where it's trying to basically define what a good adventure hook is, the best adventure hook.
Okay.
The second part is the example that they give of what they think is the best adventure hook. And then the third part is a list of reasons why this adventure hook works well. Based on
So we got a 3-part essay.
Basically, ChatGPT gave me an essay. Yes, they gave me an essay about how to create a great adventure hook. So I'll start.
So the next thing we do is it'll be, we let ChatGPT make this video essay, and we're gonna just do that.
I we'll give you the first part, where it explains what a best adventure hook is. Okay. So,
Part 1.
Part 1. A summary. The best adventure hook for tabletop role-playing is one that captures the player's imaginations, evokes a sense of excitement and mystery, and encourages them to engage with the game world. Here's a versatile and engaging adventure hook that can work for various role-playing settings, such as fantasy, science fiction, or even modern day.
That's an intro. That is something I would see at the beginning of, an adventure thing. It'd be like, this is what adventure hook should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing that you would imagine if you're reading like an RPG, they might use as an introductory statement about what they're trying to do.
Yes.
I want you to just keep that in the back of your head, though, where it says, capture the player's imagination, evokes a sense of excitement and mystery, encourages them to engage with game world, because that seems to be the three main points that it's trying to get to with their scenario.
Okay.
And we'll see what it does. Okay. Now, here we go.
Section B.
Section B. Okay. The quest is called The Lost Relic of Ages Past.
I love how generic that is.
Wait till you hear it. Long ago, a powerful artifact of immense significance and power vanished from history.
The MacGuffin, got it.
Yep. Legend tells of its ability to reshape reality, bring about great prosperity, or unleash unimaginable destruction.
So it's a wish spell.
There you go. Scholars and historians have searched for centuries, but all traces of the artifact's location have remained hidden. Now, rumors have surfaced that a fragment of an ancient map believed to lead to the lost relic has resurfaced. Various factions and interested parties are willing to pay handsomely for the map piece, sparking a race to find the remaining fragments and unlock the artifact's secrets. The players find themselves entangled in this epic quest as they stumble upon the first map fragment by chance. They must decide whether to sell it to the highest bidder, use it themselves for noble or nefarious purposes, or embark on an epic journey to find the relic before others do. End of Section B.
I feel like this is just the synopsis plot of One Piece. I don't know if you know much about the anime One Piece.
They're looking for the One Piece, right?
Yeah. The pirates are looking for the One Piece.
Right, exactly. I mean, I feel like if you really wanted to think about it, there's a lot of science fiction or fantasy where this is kind of the basic structure of
yeah,
the thing.
it's something that's very familiar in what the program has described as a plot. Like, this is all, it's very generically okay. Right.
Like, I read that, and the first time I read it, it's like, no, that's an adventure hook. Yeah, sure. But I also was like, there's not a lot of personality to it. It's very, very basic. And I think that the reason why is, like, even in the synopsis at the beginning, that they wanted to create something that was for fantasy, science fiction, modern day, that could fit into any kind of setting. When you start to do that, and you want to create something that's modular like this, it can't really be too complex in its theme. Very open-ended.
I feel like if you took this adventure hook and then you made it fit into your world that you've got in a thematic way, it could be very much improved.
Right.
Of course, because I'm taking map fragment centuries and whatever. Maybe the MacGuffin is something specific to your setting. Maybe it's a tablet of the old gods or something, you know?
Right.
Who knows?
It's possible. But now, this is the part that I love. They give a synopsis of why they're right, basically. I love this.
The AI would like to tell you why it is correct that this is the best adventure hook.
Yes. Part C, the argument of why I'm right. So it says, why this hook works well. 1. Mystery and intrigue. The concept of a powerful lost artifact sparks curiosity and intrigue, motivating players to explore the world to uncover its secrets. 2. Clear goals. The players have a specific objective: find the relic. This provides a sense of direction, preventing aimless wandering.
They wandered onto the fragment, just happenstance. It just happened to be where they were. Feel like it's going to encourage more wandering.
Right. And I think that there's plenty of ways that you could create a clear goal for what you want to do besides find the relic. Most quests that or adventure hooks that I've heard seem to have fairly clear goals, at least, or an objective that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, find the relic is kind of a long-term objective.
Number 3, room for creativity. The fragmentary map allows for creativity in designing diverse locations and challenges for the players to navigate. So this is why they created a fragmented map. Basically, so you can fill in the pieces afterward, which I get. But, the more that I read through this, the more I was like, so basically they're just giving me a framework that then the person running the game has to then fill in the blanks for.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. 4. Personal motivation. Players can attach their character's personal goals and beliefs to the quest, making it more immersive and meaningful. But they can do that with any quest. So
yeah.
That's not specific to, the lost relic of ages past. But I guess you could.
They should have made it the lost relic of ages future. Or the future past.
Now it's an X-Men quest.
Yeah.
Flexible setting. This hook can fit into any setting, be it high fantasy, sci-fi, or a modern-day campaign, allowing the game master to adapt it to their players' preferences. Yes, I get that. That was in the thesis statement. 6. Conflict and allies. The quest attracts various factions and individuals, creating potential allies, rivals, and adversaries, adding depth to the adventure. Well, you just said that it was going to. You didn't really make the reasoning clear. Various factions and interested parties are willing to pay handsomely for the map piece.
Yeah, they've got their own objectives. You have to come up with them on your own.
Yeah. A race to find the remaining
you asked for a plot hook, not a complete story rundown, so I guess it's fair.
That's true. That's on me. Me. And then 7. Scale and scope. The hunt for the lost relic offers the potential for both smaller, intimate encounters and grand-scale conflicts, catering to different playstyles. True. It is generic enough that you could do both of those things. And then there is a summary at the bottom, because
a summary of the summary.
There's a summary at the bottom, like final thoughts. This is Jerry Springer's final thoughts segment. Remember, the key to a successful adventure hook is to tailor it to your players' interests and preferences. Engage with your players, discuss their expectations, and build a storyline that captivates their imaginations. Flexibility and adaptability are essential in tabletop role-playing, so be ready to adjust the narrative based on player choices and actions. So that's what ChatGPT gave me.
Okay, so I'm going to let you know, I think my favorite parts that are the best parts of this are parts 1 and the end here. Yeah, it just tells you that, hey, this is what makes a good plot hook, and it's not wrong. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, this is why this one's good. And okay, that, goes along with the beginning. It really gave you an essay.
It was an essay more than a plot hook or an adventure hook. Yeah.
It gave you an intro, a body, a conclusion, and a summary.
Exactly. It said, this is what you should get. Here's a scenario of that thing being got. Here's a PowerPoint presentation of the reasons why it was good. And then here's a summary of my final thoughts on what you should be doing. Hey, look, as far as the structure goes, I didn't ask it to do anything specifically, like in a conversational style. This was just what it popped back to me when I asked for the best adventure hook. But I would suggest that you could actually come up with better adventure hooks. Not a bad starting place, but,
I think you could ask it more specific questions as well.
Oh, sure. I probably
if you wanted to come up with an adventure about a specific thing.
I gotta ask it a question about, like, if I come up with some absurdist idea for, like, a setting, and just say, can you give me an adventure hook for this stupid setting? I'll do it in Unicorn Grove in the Gumdrop Woods or something, and see what it comes up with.
I was thinking pocket dimensions.
Oh, perfect. It will be the lost relic of pocket dimensions. I can't wait.
The lost relic of Polly Pocket.
Oh, man. Can you imagine if we had a Polly Pocket cinematic universe?
No. No, thank you.
Okay. So anyway, this is what I ended up with, and I kept going over this, and I thought to myself, like, that's not bad. Like notes to be taken. That's not bad, and it does seem like this is the kind of thing that you would give to a very new game master who's trying to figure out something portable that they can work off of as an adventure hook. So,
One Piece.
Exactly. And then you can put all of, like, the fact that, Luffy's trying to take down an entire corporate system into play afterward, and also wants to be the best pirate.
Yes.
So basically, like, I was looking at this, I was trying to process it and try to figure out, like, the critical thought process behind, like, how it came up with this idea, and that it was probably pulling from a lot of, like, source books that had similar things that it would say about this, because I imagine that this is in a lot of RPG books would have some kind of similar statement.
Yeah. It's, what is a role-playing game?
Exactly. And I came to a conclusion from this about, like, the technology behind, like, AI and ChatGPT and all of that. There's a useful tool that you can have this for, where if you look at it critically and you then take this and really pick it apart and start looking at what works, what you do like in that very opening statement where it's talking about versatility and engagement and, like, which one of these you think are priorities, what you actually want to utilize in that, and all of that. I think it can be useful to get over, like, writer's blocks and, storytelling stumbles that you might have where you want to be able to just have somebody throw a bunch of text back at you so that you can analyze it and really think about it in a different way. I think that's the useful part. The part that's not useful is if I uncritically looked at this and I just took it on its face and said, yep, that's what it is. That's the best adventure hook because ChatGPT told me to.
Yeah.
And I came to this conclusion. Tell me if you think that, like, this theory works for you. I'm less worried now about AI becoming as smart as humans, and more that humans will become as dumb as AI. Because what we'll end up doing is just take what the AI gives us and just not think anywhere above or beyond what it presents you with.
I was thinking what it would be like if either part of a script or part of a written piece was taken just from AI. So, like, maybe you organically are writing, like, I'm using the word organic as you yourself are writing a piece out. But then you have a part and you're stumbling for a minute, or you just like, I'm going to use AI to fill the section in. And just leave it in there as if it, as is. Right. And then go back to your own writing. I wonder if anyone would notice.
The thing that scares me is that I think somebody who's a critic or who, like, really follows your writing may wonder what was going on with this, like, chapter or something that you put into the book where it didn't matter. But I unfortunately think that for, like, 95% of the population, they would not think about it at all. It would just,
especially if you've got a collection of written works that you can then feed it.
Oh, yeah.
So it can copy your writing style.
Can you imagine if you were a prolific enough writer, like if you were Stephen King, right? And
I
you
was just thinking Stephen King.
Yeah, Stephen King, and you can, like, feed all of your novels into a thing and say, okay, now write more of my novels in perpetuity throughout the universe. Would they make sense? Would they have the same style? I was just watching a video actually on this where Patrick H. Willem was talking about how like AI art is a grift. It's not it's not actually art. And he was discussing this in terms of the AI parodies that they did of like if Wes Anderson directed Lord of the Rings or of like Star Wars or something, and they do that. And he was trying to explain, like, the reason that they do that is because there's a very specific style that Wes Anderson has. So you recognize the style. But if you look at the actual thematic elements, anyone who really understands, like, Wes Anderson in terms of storytelling missed the part entirely with that, with the AI generation, which is just, it's the aesthetics, but it's not the substance. So, yeah. So when I look at this, I think to myself, this could be very useful if you're like, I can't think of adventure hooks, and you throw this in, and then you kind of go, okay, now what if this actually works? What doesn't work? What do I actually care about? Now I have somebody, presenting this to me. So now my pushback is like, oh no, actually, which of these things that it's supposed to do apparently actually matter to me? What can I do without? Etc., etc. The problem would be, as I imagine a lot of people, even lawyers apparently, would just just take the words that it gives you and say, great, and move on without any other further thought involved. If you were to critique ChatGPT's best adventure hook, what are your final thoughts?
Great for an idea, not great for fleshing it out.
Right, like, I don't think I would want to run this, or I would want to play in this scenario specifically, but I get why the framing is there, and I could see utilizing it for an adventure hook to say, oh, I get the fragmentary map and how that leads you into different paths, and it's portable. I can see that. Yeah. I can see
I think if you took it and then expanded upon it greatly,
which it even sees... It even seems to be begging you to do that in the game.
Yeah. It's bare bones, but like if you used it to expand upon it, it could be fine. Like, I don't have a problem with it. It's just very generic.
It's very generic, and it seems like that was the, what it was trying to give me. Since I did not, I guess, specify what kind of adventure hook, I just needed an adventure hook for tabletop.
Yeah.
So it tried to give me something that was a universal answer. I just don't know if universality always results in a good plot line or quest line.
You'll have to ask it sometime. Be like, give me the most interesting plot hook ever.
If I do, we'll come back and we'll talk about it. And see. We'll take some critical eye.
We'll see how this episode does.
Yes, we'll see if we can take a critical eye to another thing at some point and see what it gives us. But
if you would like us to ask ChatGPT a question about quests or something like that, let us know.
We will not just read it without any kind of thought. We'll actually be dissecting it. So
I mean, I won't give it any thought. You will, but it's
Exactly. Alex will just sit back and go, yep, looks good.
Yeah, looks good. Let's run it.
That's right. Hey, Alex, remember, the key to a successful adventure hook is to tailor it to the player's interests and preferences. Did you know that?
I did not. Now I do, though, and I am all the better for it.
Knowing is half the battle. Thanks, Jake.
The other half the battle is having bullets.
So, hey, if you've asked a similar question, or if you type in that same question to ChatGPT, tell me if you get a different result, because I'm wondering if it's going to spit out something different for you based on the prompt. Let us know in the comments down below. So we had a question in our Discord from James the Dabbler.
Hello, James. I hope you're listening. Hope you're doing well.
I know you were excited to hear us talk about this. I hope you know that this is that segment. James asked, okay, don't know if it's already been done, but I'd love an episode on using skills and stats to help establish, reinforce an RPG's setting and themes. And when he first gave that to us, I was kind of curious as to what he might have meant by that, and so asked a little bit of follow-up to see if somebody could give me an example of this, because I kind of knew what he was talking about, but I wasn't quite sure how we wanted to address it. Datum came in with a little bit of an idea that maybe I should look at the One Ring, because it was custom built for Lord of the Rings. And so I did look into that a little bit. For those who don't know, the One Ring was like one of the biggest kickstarting RPGs that ever happened.
Aside from Avatar?
I think Avatar came in afterward and just surpassed it. But at the time that it came out, it was like one of the biggest projects. And it was based entirely on the idea of Lord of the Rings. And so I looked into it a little bit just to kind of see what the mechanics of it were and how that reinforces the idea of the setting. So I guess the first thing I would ask you, Alex, is when I say Lord of the Rings, what do you think of?
Middle-earth.
Okay, what kind of things inside of Middle-earth do you think of with Lord of the Rings? What themes really jump out at you?
Long quests that should be shorter because you should take eagles to Mordor.
Yeah, because you should take... No, I thought that we decided that you can't take the eagles to Mordor.
Whatever.
You haven't worked that out yet. I thought you were going to say ants. But just...
I try not to think about those fucking ants.
Okay. Anyway, so here's the thing. I was reading through some of what they gave on the site. I was looking at the Wikipedia article, and I was looking at also the PDF that they had for the character sheet to kind of give an idea of what it has. The general tone is that they split the One Ring into two phases. Okay, so you've got an adventuring phase and a fellowship phase. In the adventuring phase, a company of adventurers heads off from their home and into the wild in search of adventure. In the fellowship phase, it provides heroes with an opportunity to rest and recuperate, practice skills, pursue noble undertakings. It uses dice, but it uses D12s.
Okay.
D12s. Well, we know from conversations we've had in the past, D12s are the sturdiest dice. That's why they were used.
Fair.
That's why Avarice used it, remember?
That's why dwarves should use them. They're sturdy.
Exactly. But remember when we talked about Avarice, and that was based off of Dwarf Fortress, and they used the D12s in that system.
True.
It's marked with numbers 1 through 10, and then there are two symbols. There's a Gandalf's rune and an Eye of Sauron.
Okay.
And there's also a six-sided success die with a Tanglar rune on the 6, which I guess just tells you that you've gotten the highest number. But one of the things that they mention in here is the idea that it covers mechanics about the journey across Rovanian, which is the setting that they use for the game.
Okay.
Which has mechanics for, like, attrition, making journeys a challenge in and of themselves. So, I guess the whole thought process is putting mechanics behind the idea of the journey when, if you think about it, the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy is about a journey. It's literally about a quest that takes you from point A to point B, practically. You go from the Shire to Mount Doom. That's the journey.
So, the quest is the journey we had along the way.
The quest is the journey that we had along the way. Exactly. So some of the features that they actually give for the game: rules for traveling across the land, which is the journey, facing frightening foes, which is combat, and meeting the personalities of Middle-earth, which is the council. And then throughout, advice of the lore master on how to bring Middle-life to Earth. The lore master would be like your GM equivalent. Including rules for magical treasures, the Shadow, and the Eye of Mordor. So they've added in these things that are ostensibly things that you would understand from Lord of the Rings, and they've turned them into mechanics in the game itself. And then, of course, the bestiary is what you'd expect from a Middle-earth bestiary. And then I got to the PDF, and I was kind of interested because when I downloaded it, they gave me 4 different types. They gave me for hobbits, dwarves, elves, and humans, which are kind of important races in the world of Middle-earth. Mm-hmm. But then when I started looking at them, I realized it's just the aesthetics of the thing. It doesn't change the stat sheets. The stat sheets are the same for each one. So in here, we basically have 3 main stats of strength, heart, and wits. And then that seems to be broken down into some other, like, skills. So under strength, you have things like hunting and awareness, athletics, song, craft. Under heart, you have things like enhearten, courtesy, battle, healing. And then under wits, you have things like exploring, riddle, lore, scanning, stuff like that. Yes.
Quick question.
Sure.
Who made this game?
This was designed by Francesco Nepitello and Marco Maggi, and the game was initially published by Cubicle 7 in 2011 under the title The One Ring Adventures Over the Edge of the World. Cubicle 7 continued to publish the first edition of the game until 2019, and then Nepitello and Maggi developed the second edition, which is published by Free League Publishing.
Okay.
Under the same title, The One Ring role-playing game. So,
gotcha.
What I found interesting was that they have this mechanic for travel and for the journey itself, which does set it apart from other medieval fantasy settings that you might be familiar with, where travel is not really that big a deal. It's just a time between 2 points, where, you actually get exhaustion. There are a lot of conditions in here, like there's injuries, but also you can get to weary or miserable or wounded status. But what does all of that actually mean to what the topic we're talking about? Well, how do we use the mechanics to reinforce the world building and the story development in a similar vein to what they did here with certain mechanics for the journey, when the journey is everything about Lord of the Rings? I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, if you're designing a game, right, from the ground up, what do you want to do for mechanics to reinforce the ideas of the game's story or setting?
So I think in a lot of those cases, you'd want something that makes sense for the world. I know if I were to bring up playing Geo, which I was mentioning to you earlier a little bit ago, it's taking place in a primordial world where it's like dinosaurs and stuff, an ancient type deal.
Sure.
I believe. I haven't dug into it much, but I saw a couple things. One of them is like no wheels or axled vehicles.
Oh, okay.
For instance, using them, if you use them, it'll incur like the wrath of the old gods or something along those lines. Because this is a world that's pre-technology like that. So like these are things that basically, to enforce people not using them, it's like, yeah, if you use these, then it will incur the wrath,
right?
Kind of deal. And that's on par with mechanics that help keep the world in how you envision it. Another one I think was no numbers above 9 or something similar like that, because you can only count on your fingers.
Yeah.
So anything above a certain number was also bad juju. Again, I have not looked through this fully. At some point, I will dig into that here, probably, maybe eventually in a year from now when I get to reading it.
Yeah.
If you want a game that's set in Lord of the Rings, you want to make it so the things that are important in that world have things backing them up to reinforce them. Like the journey being part of the, as you were saying, the journey being the important part in Lord of the Rings, then mechanics that enforce that and help expand upon that should be big. It shouldn't just be like, yes, we're traveling in D&D. Fast travel to when you reach the city. Make a couple skill checks for your horses and navigation.
I would be very surprised if they created a Lord of the Rings game and it was literally just like, well, you start in the Shire, and then we're just going to narrate what you do for the entire journey until you get to the Mount Doom. Or just no, we're gonna skip forward to Helm's Deep. Let's just move it along. It doesn't really feel very epic. I understand that. I was trying to relate it back to things that I might have played, and what I remember. And Dungeons and Dragons is a setting that I'm pretty familiar with, but I don't necessarily know if D&D specifically has a framework for its mechanics that reinforces the game world itself. I don't think of like strength or dexterity or even the skills themselves as being a reinforcement of the game world. I think that's actually one of the reasons why people have been able to take very, very disparate settings and apply them to Dungeons and Dragons as a setting. It's the reason why Adventure Zone can do Ethersea, which is a completely different setting, and they can take the D&D mechanics and all of their skills and everything and apply it. It's not setting specific as much as you might think. I remember when I was playing like 1879, there is a system in that where you're going on these adventures and you're supposed to be going on these grandiose adventure and doing things in the game where you get adventure points. So you don't gain experience. You know, it's not an experience system, it's an adventure points, and then you use those adventure points and you can spend them essentially in your character sheet and can use it to like increase your durability or increase your actual stats. But the thing that's interesting there is that, and this does kind of reinforce the system, is that in order to upgrade your skills, you have to use the skills. Like, for instance, if I say I want to get good at this crafting, I have to say I'm going to use my crafting skill in this scene, use it, and then I have to make a check mark on it. If I'm level 2 in crafting and I want to go to level 3, not only do I have to spend adventure points in it, but I have to show that I have used crafting 3 times since the last time I upgraded it. So you have to do it in the game with those settings, so that
that makes sense.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite like mechanics actually from that game, because it reminded me a little bit of like Elder Scrolls, where you have to do stuff to get better at them.
Yeah, you gotta wrap the rubber band around the controller and sneak. That way you're gonna just get your sneak up.
Yeah, you crouch down, put the rubber band around it, crouch, and walk into a wall for about 2 hours, and you're good. You're great. You have to actually do the work, so it encouraged people to take the different skills that the game presented you with and utilize them on a regular basis as often as you possibly could. But then I think that gets tempered with you can only do it like once per scene, essentially.
Which makes you not be able to abuse it.
Right.
Another one that I'm thinking of now is the Warhammer RPGs, for instance,
Sure.
which are very world setting. You know, it takes place in that world. So all the skills in that, like, knowing about Xenos and knowing about Archaeotech and stuff are all skills that reinforce that. Like, your characters should not know a lot about some of these things. They're, like, pretty much forbidden knowledge. So, like, having skills that you can learn to know about these things is helpful, because, like, if you don't know anything about Xenos, you're not going to know about this orc that's attacking you. You're going to be like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
But also, like, one of the things that's a mechanic that in there is called Perils of the Warp. And if you know anything about Warhammer, then the Warp is this big psychic space.
Fun.
There's real space, and then there's the Warp, which is made up of just psychic phenomena.
Sure.
It is vast. It is tumultuous. They use it for their not faster than light, but this is how we get around space. We fly through the warp. It doesn't obey the same laws of real space at all.
Sure.
Also, it's really dangerous. But that's also like where the Chaos Gods reside, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But also Psychers, who are basically your magic users in the game.
Yep.
Call upon powers of the warp to cast their psychic powers.
Oh, okay.
And so rolling dice on that always has a chance of rolling Perils of the Warp, because it's dangerous.
Oh.
So you can roll on that and you get a Perils of the Warp that something bad or beneficial could happen. You could blow a hole in a ship. You could summon a demon. Your head could explode. There's a lot of things that make this dangerous, but also the powers are really sometimes really effective. So, you know, maybe you'd like, I want to use a psychic power. It sounds like a good time, because it would be absolutely destructive to, like, I could crush that tank with my mind. And then you summon a demon.
Yeah, you see, you don't want to summon demons.
Not usually.
Not usually. I prefer not to do that if I can avoid it.
So in that system, in that setting, it makes sense because this is something dangerous that, you know, a lot of people, if they see that you are psychic, that itself is like a black mark on you. Like, they don't trust psychics in that setting. They're like, yeah, unless you're sanctioned by the fucking emperor, we don't trust you. The psychers away. They take them away on black ships and then usually sacrifice them to the emperor to keep them alive. So like, if you're a sanctioned psyker, that's so few that actually are. And then if you're unsanctioned and anyone catches you doing it, you're gonna get like the entire planetary defense force called on your ass.
Yeah.
So like, using powers is dangerous. Having knowledge of the powers is dangerous.
Right.
So it makes sense that mechanically they go, hey, this is a thing some people have access to because they're a class or a character that has ability to do psychic powers.
Sure.
But also, they're fucking dangerous, even for people who are good at them.
Right.
So it's you risk reward. I need to use this. It's gonna be helpful, but also there's a high risk.
On the other side of this, I think about like setting agnostic sort of RPGs, and I wanted to pull this up just so that I had a reference point. But if you remember Open Legend, I'm a little bit familiar with that one, and the whole idea of that was that it was setting non-specific. It has no actual setting to itself, although they did make some campaign settings, but the system itself was made to be able to be used for anything. It can be used for any kind of setting. And so when you look at the kind of skills that it has, it's made to be able to mold to whatever you want to do. Like, for instance, some of the skills that they have are light. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to have a magical light. You could have a torch. You could have a mechanical torch, something like that. But it's something that creates light is like a skill that you might have. Great leap. Ability to almost superhumanly leap. Now, does that mean that you have the technology on your legs to do that? Or if you have a spell to do that? They don't actually say.
I will say having a skill for light is strange in my books.
Really? Oh, because why wouldn't you just carry a light on you?
That'd be more of an object or an ability to create light than just a skill. Ah, yes, I've got a torch.
Well, if you're holding on to the flashlight, you are creating the light by turning on the flashlight.
Do I need flashlight skill?
You customize your light skill as flashlight.
See, that's why it's a little weird to me. The light should be more of an object or maybe a spell or something, but I don't think it's something I would need a skill in. Maybe I want to do stage direction, though. Maybe I'm up there with a spotlight and the skill is actually really useful.
Right. I do think it would be kind of weird, like, if I had a flashlight and then I roll for my energy stat and, like, I fail. Like, what? I don't turn the flashlight on.
The batteries die.
Yeah, the batteries are dead.
Yeah.
General idea is that you're starting from something that seems very generic so that you can just put your own thing over it. And that's the whole idea behind a just setting non-specific idea. It reinforces the idea that you can turn it into whatever you want, like unmolded clay. But in terms of that, like, I was trying to think of other good examples of it, and I'm glad that they named it. Datum had also mentioned one other thing that I had not gotten to look that much into, Ars Magica. For so many RPGs, you would need to have something that sets you apart, and one of the best ways to do that would be to make the mechanics really fit your setting to reinforce it. And I think that that's a generally good thing, because by reinforcing it with the mechanics, it reminds players every single time they go to do actions or take steps to move the plot and the storyline forward about the world that they're in. But at the same time, I've played plenty that it just didn't really resonate directly to it, and I don't know if it necessarily ruined my enjoyment or immersion in the game. Like I said, Dungeons & Dragons stats and skills are not really, that specific to the setting.
Well, they did get rid of a bunch of skills between 3, 5, and 5, so...
That's true. They realized that they didn't need, like, the spot skill if they already have, like, investigate and perception and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Weren't there, like, 3 different kinds of perception skills?
Listen and spot, and those were separate.
Yeah.
And now it's all perception.
Generally, yeah, if you can find a way to really reinforce the very idea of the game, like in One Ring where the journey is so important, to make the mechanics fit that, I think it's useful. I think it can be very beneficial, but I don't think it's necessary. It doesn't have to be that way, but it's helpful if you were to use it.
But they really can too. Again, with the Warhammer systems, the games want you to know that it's incredibly lethal.
Right.
And so the mechanics back that up very well. Because it's,
Sure.
hey, you've got maybe 10 wounds you can take. Also, the damage you're doing is d10s. So it's like, yeah, you don't want to get in fights all the time.
I like games where you start to realize that the deadliest thing is fall damage.
There was a meme years ago about fall damage and that Space Marines just tripping and falling could die.
Yep, good world building.
Yeah, it was bad rules as written because it was, hey, falling damage negates, your toughness and doesn't care about your armor. So you take straight, fall damage, you just take straight damage.
Sure.
So in that system, because the armor and toughness would negate damage.
Sure.
So taking straight damage with no armor or toughness and you fall and roll a 10, it's like, oh, well, I just fucking died from falling 10 feet.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
So it's like, rules as written, this is not great.
Yeah. I don't know if it necessarily makes you feel any better that you have a system where your Marines can just die by tripping on a staircase.
It's hilarious, but yeah.
Yeah, good times. If any of you out there have a setting that is specific that you can cite, the mechanics for being related to it, I'd like to know. Because it is something that I'm not very familiar with, only because so many of the settings that I have personally played in don't really focus that heavily on mechanics as part of the world building. But mechanics as part of the world building is like 2 subjects that we talk about. So
yes.
Mechanics and world building are very important together, and I would like to get some good examples of how you can reinforce that. Please let us know in the comments down below, or check us out on our Discord channel if you'd like to talk to us more about it. I got one more thing that I wanted to discuss with you, and it has to do with a game called Daggerfall. You familiar with it?
I've never played it, but I certainly know of it, yes.
That's fine, you're not really missing much. I actually tried Daggerfall, the Unity version, not too long ago. And, my general thoughts are, I get what they were trying to do. Very, very ambitious, by the way. But it's hard for somebody who's used to later installments to play by the way that it's built. I did try to explain to, in my Titanium mind, though, of just how gigantic the landscape of Daggerfall is. So Skyrim had a game size of 37 kilometers. Mm-hmm. Okay. That doesn't necessarily include the verticality, but the overall map size is 37 kilometers. Okay. Daggerfall is 161,600 kilometers.
Square kilometers?
Yes.
It's a lot.
Yes. It's a big map.
A little bit.
Yes. What I was interested in when I was reading about it, though, is that apparently the reason why it was so large is because even at that time, it used procedural generation for a lot of the map. So that's also probably the reason why when I was playing it, I was like, boy, there are a lot of big open spaces between all of the dungeons and everything. But it got me to thinking about a different way of looking at world building, which is not from the full creation of it, but from a starting point that you work out from. as you go.
I think we've talked about this a little bit before.
A little bit, but what got me really thinking about this was a game that I tried recently that has a different way of approaching it. And that's called Above Snakes. And what it does is it creates a survival crafting game, but it builds outward by you placing tiles for the landscape as you go.
Fun plug really quick on that.
Yes.
Frequent commenter of our channel, Clayton Calix,
yes,
who has his own channel, is, I believe, doing a playthrough of Above Snakes currently. So check that out if you want to see comprehensive gameplay of it.
Yes. I had just played the demo because I wanted to try it out. I actually had seen Clayton doing that, and I was like, "Oh, that looks interesting. Maybe I'll try it out."
Speaking of Clayton, though, if you're listening to this and want to come on the show sometime to chat, let me know.
Yes.
Come on the show.
Get over here. What I found really interesting about it is that you're just doing actions in the game, and then periodically, when you do enough stuff, you get the ability to place a world tile, and then you can unlock different kinds of world tiles so that you build not just meadows, but also forests, and eventually lakes, and plains, and all of these things, and that you actually place the individual tiles. I think of it a little bit like Carcassonne in terms of the actual framework of it, where you're placing down individual tiles and mashing them to the existing landscape. But it's also a survival crafting game, so you're expanding the world and the narrative by creating these pieces and then getting special pieces that inform you about, like, this broken down wagon or this encampment that's off to the side that you've placed down. So in some ways you are generating it yourself. You build the world out as you go. And my thought process was that it's very interesting to think of building the world as you keep moving through it instead of having like a set map at the beginning.
It's kind of like a game that's behind game here, Vast, which is a tile laying game.
Right, exactly. Any kind of tile laying
It makes it so that every playthrough of the game is going to be different because you're going to have different tiles, it's not just that it's procedurally generated necessarily, it's that you are randomizing the experience. So even if the map tile is one that you've gotten before, you may get it at a different point in time than you ever got it before.
Right, exactly.
I've not played Above Snakes. I'm assuming this is the case.
What happens in Above Snakes is that you get the ability to build different tiles by unlocking them. So you start off with like meadows, and then if your technology gets to a certain point, you get to a point in the storyline, they say, hey, you can unlock forests. And so then you unlock the forest, and then if you wanted to place a forest tile, you could do that. But you have to like mash like forest to forest, meadow to meadow, etc. And you can have like half blocks and stuff, so that it moves from forest here to meadow or whatever. And so you can lay that down, and then you unlock different kinds of tiles as you're going across it. But there is no set map, which interested me because when I went out looking at this, I thought that's what was going to happen, that I just explore and I uncover that. I didn't know I was actually building the map as I went. And I thought that was very interesting. It is very different than like in Daggerfall, where they used procedural generation and then that became the map and everybody experienced the same map. But in some ways, the design procedure of saying, like, we're going from a starting point, we're designing it out, and then that just becomes what the map is, and we work from there, is a little bit different than what you usually think of when you're building a game world, which is where you design the whole thing, and then if you need to add stuff in later, you do that. But the actual landscape, the map, is set when you start. What I was trying to think of is, like, could you apply that to role-playing? How would you Okay, great. Thanks. End of segment. Great. How would you lead your players through a scenario where they have to essentially build out or you create the map as you go?
So we've talked about this a little bit, I think, before.
Possibly.
It might have been just after the show or before the show. But you could say start in a small town with maybe the first 10 miles radius mapped out.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, hey, you guys are gonna go somewhere. You get to pick where you're going, and we'll generate from there.
Sure.
Alternatively, the other option that I would go with for that was how I had mentioned before. I'd like to do a frontier town type deal.
Yeah.
Where you are exploring a new land. So what you would do then is you start again with this very small, tiny portion where you've set up your base.
Sure.
Your frontier.
Mm-hmm.
This is the outpost, and you're exploring from the coastline here, because you're going to be on a coastline, or maybe just next to the coastline, but you're going to be next to a water source, probably next to a easy port, and then you explore the land from there. So every time you journey out, you could push a little farther in established paths, but what you could do is, if you want to take this example of Above Snakes, is you could do it in a tile base.
Yeah.
You could have this graph paper out there. Or if you wanted to, for instance, if you're drawing it, you could have graph paper and be like, cool, which one of these next sections do you want to go to?
Sure. Yeah.
And then you go, all right, you're going to this one, and we're going to either you could roll for it, or you could have cards that have different things on them.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do it in that way, that'd be an interesting, basically make it a tile laying experience where, all right, you've gone from the coastline to a forest. You're going from the forest to a lake. You're going from the lake to a, you could do it that way. Or you could make it a little less, card-based and just kind of go with it. Roll a couple things on, a table of features of it, what type of land it is. Maybe it's a prairie. Cool. Does it have any features? Rock formation.
Mm-hmm.
You can do something like that where you've got a couple different tables and you roll it out.
Sure.
So I think that you could easily do something like this. The hard part is that a lot of times I feel in RPGs, TTRPGs, people want to have a large picture of the world to begin with, despite using very little of it. We're familiar with Faerun.
Sure. Yeah.
In Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter, the Sword Coast.
Yeah, the Underdark.
Anyone who plays D&D. Yep, anyone who plays D&D is probably familiar with these settings of the Forgotten Realms. And most of the games that are in the Forgotten Realms setting take place at Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter. Occasionally up in the north and Spine of the World as well, but Sword Coast, that's about as much airtime as that map gets.
Yeah.
And it's sad because the map is 3,000 kilometers by another 3,000 kilometers.
Right.
Or whatever it is. And so you're getting this tiny portion, and you never have anyone go down to the jungles of Chult.
And why would they want to, though? Because I hear there's dinosaurs down there. And
well, that's
dangerous.
why they'd want to go down there. Yeah, dangers, dinosaurs, UNT.
Have you not seen Jurassic Park? This is not going to end.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, but I want to make a necromancer who's got to pet dinosaurs, so
I guess you got to go down there. Okay, cool.
But yeah, so there are parts in the map that you never hear about.
Yeah.
And this is a fairly big setting, and I still, even if you look, I'm willing to bet there's going to be very few stories taking place in other parts of that world.
Sure.
Unless you dive into the Forgotten Realms subreddit, if there is one, and go, who's done a campaign set in the marches or something,
Mm-hmm.
So I think building a world from a small section, a frontier town, and then expanding as you explore and spread and build outposts would be really cool. I think you could do that. I think it'd be really fun for the right party of people, the right group of players. It would be really fun. But I think you'd have to have the people who have the mentality, who want to be explorers pushing out into a new land. Because people who just want to adventure and do quests and slay dragons for Neverwinter don't want to go exploring and bushwhacking through. And this can relate to our last segment. If you want a game about exploring, that's the theme you're going with, being frontiersmen and explorers on a new continent, you can 100% have mechanics and skills that benefit that.
Sure.
You can have like a skill for like wayfinding, bushwhacking if you wanted to. You can anything like that, like resource gathering, you know?
Sure.
Just generally like, oh yeah, you're good at identifying stones that might be good for bringing back to quarry. You could go down and make a system specifically for this type of adventure if you wanted to, and I think that would benefit that one greatly, because then it's like, instead of herbalism being able to identify, say, oh, these are plants that are edible, it could be like, what are the people that do plant stuff?
Horticulturist?
Sure, horticulture. Maybe you're really good at identifying what plants are poisonous and what are not, through basically like knowing what plants are from your studies, and that they're new plants, but you know, you can identify them based on the way their leaves are formed, the coloration, the oily sheen on them. Maybe you can identify what trees would be good to cut down because you're an arborist.
I'm thinking that the other place where procedural generation of this kind, where maybe you have a tile-based, map, would actually be really useful in something that you use in a lot of RPGs, which is the dungeon. The dungeon or the cave system. Because imagine that you're saying, like, okay, I'm going to take these guys, and I'm going to take my crew. I'm going to take them through this cave, and there's, like, a dragon in the cave, whatever. And there's a bunch of these encounters and stuff, and there might be some treasures, but I don't really know how the map is going to lay out. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put different map pieces, and I'm going to put them on tiles, and then when they go through here and they say, oh, I want to go this way, we just lay down one at random and see what they get. And we can keep doing that until we eventually, the dragon is uncovered, or the one main piece is uncovered. And then if they want to keep exploring, we can do it until there's no avenues left, but we can kind of just do it at random. And who knows, in that scenario, you might lay down the starting tile, and then they go through there and they go, oh, there's one direction, next tile, dragon. Just sort of right there, dragon. Yeah. That's how this works. I think that would be interesting, but yeah.
I think the issue I have with that for dungeons is the same issue we've talked about before when we talked about who the hell designed this dungeon?
Yeah. It's not going to make sense, but then again, so many dungeons don't anyway, if you look at the construction of them.
Yeah. The way people map out dungeons and build them does not, in a lot of cases, ever make sense. The one place they do make more sense sometimes is in video games, but even then they still sometimes make absolute no sense.
Sure. I think it's a little easier when you're, like, in burrows or something, where, like, it's just, like, ant trails or, whatever you're going through. Yeah. But even then, there's a reason for all of that,
in games like World of Warcraft, when you've got a dungeon that is a cavern or is a building, they make more sense because you have to go through the building and it's actually fully constructed. Or in a game like Minecraft, which I've been playing recently with some friends, so I've been thinking about that. Or the cave systems. Those are actual cave systems. They make sense because they're just caves and they go off and however they go. But then the dungeons you can find occasionally, they have to be somewhat realistic because they have to dig. You don't have to dig them, but they are generated structures that have to obey the laws of the game world.
Sure.
So it can't just be like, oh yes, this is this giant sprawling thing. No, it goes into the ground and it goes and interacts with the terrain around it. So if suddenly the dungeon runs into a cave, then the dungeon runs into a cave and you can exit it through the cave system. Sure. But it's not this giant sprawling mega dungeon that makes zero sense for it to be underground, when if you dig next to it, there's no mega dungeon.
Right.
Yeah.
And Minecraft is an interesting one because every time you start a new world, it generates. It does a procedural generation too.
It does.
Even if you haven't explored it, the world is whatever the world is. You basically just say like I've generated the world based on how big I wanted it to be, and
and the world is
criteria.
generated up to a gargantuan size.
Oh yeah,
and then past the place that it normally would generate is, I guess, called the Badlands.
Nice. I love the
or
Badlands.
Something like that. Essentially, what happens with Minecraft is after you've hit the wall of where it would normally generate, it still generates out, but it doesn't obey the laws that the rest of the game within the world, like normal, like size structure would, because the generation breaks down.
Oh.
So people that go and explore, they've done this, I think there's videos of this, people that explore Minecraft worlds go to the edge of where the world would, like, it was generated, and then you go past it, and it's just, I guess, really weird, strange, insane.
Perfect.
Because it doesn't obey the laws of the generation anymore.
Yeah.
Because the procedural generation only went to a certain point, and now it's generating basically from noise.
Yeah.
Is, I guess, what it comes out to, so.
Badlands is the Mesa biome.
Oh, okay.
So that's not it. Oh, okay. The world border, by default, marks the area exactly one chunk before the 30 million mark. Jeez, I'm wondering why that happens.
Generation of the procedure breaking down.
Yeah. The biomes start running into each other, and it doesn't know which ones to generate at a certain point.
I assume so.
So I guess the thing is, I find it interesting that if people were to, design a dungeon or something freehand, it might not make all that much sense anyway, without like a game plan of how the world was constructed. I mean, let's face it. Most people that are drawing out maps for dungeons or towns are probably not, trying to make Dark Souls or something where there's like an intricacy in how everything works together. Although I would even claim, if you really look at the Dark Souls worlds, it doesn't always make sense how those are constructed either, except for the necessity of the game. You put the tiles down, and it probably won't make a ton of sense, but then again, it probably wouldn't have made sense if you did it the other way.
Yeah. So, it doesn't have to. It's fine. It's a game.
Yeah, exactly.
Suspend your disbelief. This dungeon exists, and it is 12 square kilometers of corridors.
Exactly. It's just corridor. And you know what? The thing about it is, if you have that 12 square kilometers of just corridors, that's one hell of a daredevil fight scene. Just do it.
Backrooms be damned.
Yeah, exactly. That's the longest episode of a Marvel corridor fight that you could possibly imagine, and let's face it, that's like one of the best parts. I would ask anyone out there if you have an example of like a procedurally generated world that you like, or ways that you could implement more random elements into actually building your maps. If you do, let me know, because we can discuss it at more length at some point.
Sure, all the length you want.
12 kilometers of hallway. Yeah. So, Alex, we've gotten down to the last part of the corridor here. We've gotten into the world boundary, and things are breaking down pretty quickly, so we got to get out of here.
We got to get our parachutes and run.
Get the parachutes and run. Yep. You've activated my trap card. The whole scenario is just breaking down now.
Great.
Yeah. And so if people wanted to see some of the previous stuff that we've done before we broke down this error code. Oh, hey, this goes right back to the beginning of the episode where we were talking about how we didn't have any error codes. Now we do.
Perfect. There's so many errors that the entire episode's breaking down. You should just filter this with like some noise and then just have the episode go to a please stand by at the end of this.
Yeah, I'll put something funny on our faces. It will look great. But if people wanted to find places where we didn't break down entirely, well, I don't know if they can, but where could they find other episodes of the show?
If you want to see all the other stuff we do that hasn't completely broken down yet, please go to our website at totalpebbleknockdown.com.
When you are there, you can check out our Patreon. We actually have early releases of the show in its full entirety that go up before anybody else sees them, as additional stuff as well as over there. And you can also find early releases of other things that are on the website. Check out Titanium Mine, Creatures, all the other good stuff we got. And check us out on every podcast app known to mankind, and also on socials. You can find me at Titanium.
You can find me at EXP Limited, our show at Pebble Knockdown. Although, if you're looking for us, they may be on what is now known as X.
Yes, as in X Twitter.
Yeah.
Whatever Twitter is now. I don't know.
Well, Elon has owned the domain for X.com for years.
And he just really wanted to be able to use it, didn't he?
I think he just wanted to be able to use the brand. Because...
Why not?
He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He owns Twitter.
That's true. I heard that it was, like, now banned in, like, Thailand or something because it was going to, well, because X.com, they thought that it was now a porn site, so they had to ban it.
I mean, half Twitter's probably porn anyway, so why not?
That's true. Thank you for joining us, and back will be.